Greetings to everyone. It is still great to have you with us. It's been a very long day, I think, but a very interesting one as well. We looked at the history, we looked at the present, all the opportunities for the next couple of years again ahead us. We also looked at the space. We traveled in distance, and now we are going to travel in time a bit. We are looking into 2030, and we will talk about what does it take to get us there together as an industry. First, I would like to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And while you introduce yourself, I would also like to ask you, there's a lot of buzzwords in hospitality, and if we think about the future, and please tell us which is your favorite one, which is the closest to your heart.
Are we allowed to elaborate on the buzzwords or just name them?
You are.
Hi, many of you probably already know me. My name is Ira Vogue. I would probably define myself as the industry tech innovator. I have built tech solutions for the industry and brought them to market over the course of the last 12 years. I'm also the author of the most recent industry publication, Hospitality 2.0, and currently I'm doing consulting for tech companies to explain them what the hospitality industry is about, because most of them don't actually understand what they're getting themselves into. And I do consulting for hotel companies to explain them how to use the solutions that those tech companies are building. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me. I'll be happy to connect if you guys have any questions and reach out. My favorite buzzword, I would say two. There's a couple, they come in a pair. AI and ML. And I think that, I think many of you would probably agree with me that these words are misused a lot in our industry, and we don't really understand clearly what they mean. We don't understand it, we reject it, or we misuse it. And that's why there are always only a handful of technology companies in our industry that actually offer true AI-based and machine learning-based solutions. Even though we see AI everywhere. It's in our pocket, you know, the face recognition software, how Facebook offers you targeted ads. It's everywhere, but our industry is still in the stone age when it comes to AI adoption. So I think those are my two favorite words, buzzwords that have been circling around.
Thank you, Ira. How about you, Satyen?
My name is Satyen Pandya. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Sonder. Sonder is a global hospitality company. We offer both hotel as well as apartment-based accommodations that are technology-enabled and design-first, and we operate in 35 markets in 10 countries. I've been in technology for almost 25 years, on and off in hospitality and a few other industries as well. And obviously, the buzzword closest to my heart as a chief technology officer is within technology, as it relates to guest experience, as it relates to hospitality operations, as it relates to revenue management, and providing a very personalized guest service, providing self-service features, automating AI ML, as you mentioned. Using machine learning techniques to optimize pricing and RevPAR, using machine learning techniques to identify the preferences of the guests to provide their, a very personalized service and so on. So that's what's closest to my heart.
Thank you very much. Carl?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Winston. I founded a hotel school 21 years ago in San Diego, California, and I also own a business that among other things, does asset management over hotels, and I work with several multinational hotel companies in a variety of capacities as a consultant. And I don't have any skin in the game, so I'm going to tell Sandra my favorite word for 2030 is aimed at all my hotel friends out there, DOS. You're still going to be using DOS in 2030.
Are you challenging us?
Somebody else could challenge it, but I think they're going to be using DOS in 2030.
Some brands probably will.
Yeah, the brands. I'm speaking to the brand companies. You've got DOS in your tech stack somewhere. You still will in 2030.
There's a good chance for that. How about you, Cliff?
Hi, Cliff Gallitz. I work as a partner development manager at Google. I've been at Google for 11 years, working on hotels for the last 8 or so. Prior to that, I worked for a company called ITA Software in the airline space that was acquired by Google, and did a little time with United Airlines before that. So very familiar with innovation. I will say my buzzword will be personalization, because it comes up a lot. Satyan touched on it. I think we have a long way to go to really make people feel like they are getting a unique, personalized experience everywhere from when they start their search experience through when they appear at the hotel, whether or not they speak to a front desk agent.
Thank you very much. Very interesting words, and I'm sure we will touch on a lot of these as we discuss through this topic. However, you all have the app, a head app, and the phone in your hands, so you get a chance to ask a question. Please do so. The app is there to submit your questions, and at the end, we will definitely take a look at some of those. So we are looking forward to that. Now, I think the first topic that when we think about the future is undoubtedly technology, that we feel that it will make our life different. And this would be my first question, and really with the speed of innovation being faster than it has ever been before, what will be those areas of the industry that technology will touch probably the most? And I would ask Satyan first.
Great, yeah. So I think technology is getting infused in every aspect of the business, and some of the most impactful areas are within guest experience itself. So for example, having a lot of self-service capabilities through an app, or having automated access through mobile keys, for example. Some of the examples that really make guest experience seamless. And on the operations side as well, there are going to be areas that, for example, automation of supply chain, automation of task dispatch for our hospitality associates to serve the guest needs, whether they are amenity requests or issue resolution, having a very modern messaging interface for the guests where they can easily communicate with us for any needs that they have. And a couple other that I mentioned on optimizing RevPAR through machine learning technology and algorithms, having a really personalized guest experience through through a lot of data that is learned through the machine learning techniques as well.
Very interesting, thank you. We know that Sonder is living this already today, right? But as you like to say, the brands, some of us are far behind. What do you think, Ira?
Yes, I was just going to pretty much say the same thing. The alternative accommodation sector seems to be far ahead from the hotel sector. That's why you guys are already thinking about the customer, customer satisfaction and how to improve that. In the hotel world, we are a little bit behind you guys, and I think I have a very strong opinion on the fact that while we are still suffering from this labor shortage issue that resulted from COVID, I think the main aspect of technology adoption in our world is going to be anything that helps us deal with that problem of lack of human resources. And I recently just helped cover a news story of a local restaurant in San Diego that purchased robot servers, and the guy was saying that how this helped him save $6,000 a month, and the guy never calls in sick, and they're never late for their shift, and how he's happy with his robots. But it doesn't have to be a robot. It can be really any software system that allows hotels to deal with labor shortage. And what we're seeing with this very interesting phenomenon as a result of COVID is the businesses in our space ended up having to run their hotels, run their businesses with half the staff they had before. So logically, they turned to technology to solve for this. So suddenly, now I have this piece of software that does what 10 people used to do in that department. It costs 10 times less than the salaries of those 10 people. It makes me more efficient, more profitable, more successful. What's not to like, right? So many hoteliers started adopting these technology solutions, and many started following. As a result of this, tech companies, hospitality tech companies, actually didn't suffer a lot, and Sebastian would know as an example of Cloudbeds. I don't know if I'm even allowed to mention any names from the stage, but many tech companies didn't even suffer at all and didn't decline in terms of their customer base during the pandemic. So what we're seeing is that increase the tech adoption rates, but again, this aspect of the operation that helps us deal with the problem of labor shortage. I think once we deal with that, which we probably never will solve it completely, but once we get out of this crisis, the next stage of our evolution will be something that alternative accommodations companies already doing well, is technology that aims to increase customer satisfaction. So we will finally turn to the guest and start understanding that it's important to make the guest happy in order for us to be successful. But I think that's going to be the next stage of our evolution as the industry.
So you're saying that indeed to put the guest, the traveler in the perspective, will be forced to move ahead with technology, right?
Yes, once we understand how to clean enough rooms on time and how to have enough people to do that, or use technology to do that, then we will be able to start targeting the customer satisfaction issue better than we are doing right now.
Yeah, something that comes to my mind every time I think about technology is that it's great when it works, but probably each of us have an example, a story that we could tell when it doesn't work. Cliff, what's your opinion about it? Is technology reliable today?
Is that to me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Technology only works if the user thinks that it's working. That's the way I think about it. So even though the systems might be up, it's working as intended. If the users can't figure out what they're doing with it, then that's going to be a major problem. And the example that I like to think about, we chatted about earlier, is the electronic room key, which works great. You can give it a little bit of extra time when you're at your door, but when you're in the elevator and the doors are closing and people are getting on and looking at you every few seconds, you know it's not quite working the way that you'd like it to. So there's always going to be room for improvement, and we always need to be thinking about it from that lens of the user.
Yes, I can only remember my mom, who, if she asked for some help with any of the apps, and I'm trying to explain to her where she finds it, and then the response comes, "It's not there." So that's about the user, right? Carl, do you have any experience with technology when it's not working?
I'll just amplify a little bit on the guest key. I had a recent experience at a large hotel in Las Vegas where I was so glad I got to avoid the hour-long line because I had downloaded their app. I went to my room, and the key didn't work. Who do I call? I called the front desk. 20 minutes later, they answer, "You have to come downstairs." I don't want to come downstairs. If you want to come into your room, you have to come downstairs. Okay, what do I do then? Wait in line an hour. So do I want to use that technology anymore? No. And so technology that works is critical, but I think that having it work 90% of the time isn't good enough. If we have our car, we want it to work 100% of the time? I'm not so sure that's where we're aiming in hospitality. I don't think we're aiming for 100%.
Satyen, how about you who is in the middle of technology?
Yes, I think I'm a little more adventurous than that. I think when cars were new about 100 years ago, they broke down more often than they do now. And so that's true for every new piece of technology that is invented. And the fastest growing cohort of travelers today are the millennials and Gen Zs. They're the fastest growing. And I believe that, and there's data that that cohort, they're more open to adopting new technology that may not work. They're more adventurous, and they're also, their expectations are different from technology. They want the technology ecosystem and the integrations with technology to make their lives easier. And hence, as a consequence, they're more open to it not working sometimes. I think that we can, from the development side, what we can do better is that we can experiment with new features and capabilities with a very small subset of guests and have instrumentation in our technology so that we can get a lot of feedback and data from those experiments and quickly pivot on what's working and what's not working.
Can I respond?
Yes,
to make
please.
it fun for the audience? Okay, well, listen here. The place I stayed was a big hotel. When I use alternative accommodation, Vrbo or whatever you like, if I have a problem with the lock, I call the number and they answer, and then they fix it, and I go into my place. What I'm saying is these legacy companies have legacy problems, and they're not solving it as quickly as your company is.
Yes, and it's also about, as I mentioned, like the expectation setting, right? Like I checked into Sonder yesterday, and my own app, that is developed by my own team. When I went there, I wanted to look up my access code so that I could enter the building, and the app wouldn't load because it was, my phone was transitioning from cellular data to Sonder's Wi-Fi because I was so close to the Sonder and I've been there before. So while that transition was happening, I couldn't look up my code. I understand that and I expect that, and I'm willing to wait until it actually transitions to that Wi-Fi and gives me the code. But yes, I'm with you. It is super frustrating when it does not work. And as you said, Cliff, like it's only good if it works for the guest.
Yeah, and just to add to that, how nervous I can be if my phone is running out of battery and I know that all the things I should be able to do with it is, I'll be cut off.
I personally don't stay at branded properties, so everything works well for me normally. I'm not going to be allowed on this stage anymore.
Well, there's clearly a challenge for us, right?
Yeah, and we're going to be asked to sit apart from next time.
So maybe if this leads to our next topic, is really how well we are equipped for that, and what would it take for the brands to catch up with it?
Oh boy, that's a multi-billion-dollar question. I would say that our industry is, as I mentioned before, the industry is large, and there are different sectors. When it comes to the hotel sector, and again, if we compare it to the alternative accommodations, and I think that's why we have Satyen representing that sector here on the stage. When I was writing my book, I did a deep analysis of the alternative accommodations, which has many different names, but let's stick with AA, not that kind of AA, but alternative accommodations sector. I was fascinated how well they're already solving many of those problems. It's amazing what they've done in terms of the customer acquisition, e-commerce, self-check-in, customer retention, personalization, all those wonderful things, and being able to adapt to the changing interests of the traveler, the changing expectations of the traveler. It's so much easier for them to pivot. They actually understand the space, they understand, and they're dynamically adapting to the changes. When it comes to the hotel part of our industry, we're way behind these guys, and there is so many things, so much we can learn from them. But when it comes to the hotel industry, again, it's important to understand that the independent space and the branded space are like two completely separate animals. And again, if we compare the two, I have a very strong opinion, which is very logical, that it's just easier for independent and smaller chains, smaller companies to adapt to these changing environments. That's why I think that space is just much better equipped as of right now to get to where we're aiming by 2030 in terms of all these technology implementations, AI, and the customer satisfaction and e-commerce. And unfortunately, again, probably not the news, the brands are going to be having a really hard time pivoting because they are large companies, they're old companies, and some are already investing in these technologies, but many are way, way behind the evolution curve and are very much in the Stone Age. And I hear stories left and right about the technology they're still using. And it's just amazing that we still hear the type of the technology in 2022. It just shouldn't be that way. We should be on the way to embracing modern cloud-based solutions that are helping us be more efficient, that don't cost us much, that are not heavy, that are based on SaaS model, that implement AI, ML, and all those wonderful things. So I think it's important to understand that hospitality industry is very large, and they're just different, very, very different sectors within this industry, and they're not really evolving at the same pace. So we can learn from the guys who are ahead of us, like Sonder.
Thank you. Cliff, the next topic I would turn to you to discuss. When we think about Google, I think Ira said that when technology advancement, the smaller independent ones are in advantage. When it comes to Google and hospitality, I almost feel that the big brands with the funds and the money had the advantage there. How are you looking into the future when it comes to brands versus independent and alternative accommodations?
We have a big effort right now to try to provide connectivity for rate distribution, content distribution for literally any type of property. So from the smallest independent, international, domestic, to the big brands. And big brands do have some advantages in that they can do an integration and get a large number of properties at scale. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible to work with cloud-based vendors and other technology partners that work with smaller independent hotels to enable them to distribute their content on Google as well. So I feel that every type of hotel, branded, non-branded, has their challenges in technology and innovation, but there's really opportunities for everyone.
Thank you. And maybe another question to you on distribution channels and segments. That I also feel something that Google is sort of taking away the boundaries of that.
Yes and no, because there's still organizational boundaries. So we do have folks that will look at OTAs in a bucket, look at Google, maybe other Meta type players in another bucket, and then they allocate their resources against the two. I believe longer term, folks will look at that more holistically and just look at where are my guests coming from and how can I attract those guests, and look at it less about any particular channel. Now, that said, I know there will be challenges along the way with corporate rates, et cetera, for those particular customer segments. However, I think it will broadly normalize.
May
So you
I?
got excited
Oh my
about
God.
the topic.
This is my favorite topic. So I know Cliff will never admit. And if you ask Google, they're like, we're not going to become an OTA. We don't have any plans for it. I think they probably, most likely, won't get into handling the transactions between the business and the consumer, so the hotel and the traveler, because that's not the business model that they use to make their money. So they probably won't. But the reality is that, so currently, as we know, this is a distribution conference, so it's probably very dear to your heart, this topic. So OTAs are essentially controlling the distribution for the most part, because the majority of a lot of reservations come through that channel, and hoteliers are very dependent on that channel because they have so much power. They have a lot of marketing budget, and branded companies, large hotel brands, can't disrupt that because they're just not large enough. For example, Expedia and Booking.com together spent $15 billion on marketing in 2019. I don't know what it's been the last couple of years, but compare that to just $1 billion that Marriott spent, much bigger numbers. So the only disruptor that we have on the market that could possibly change things is another giant like Google, right? And with the introduction of PPS model, which is essentially mimics and I spoke to some of you during the networking events about the very same topic, because I think this is happening right in front of our eyes. It's reshaping the entire distribution landscape. The PPS model mimics the hotel collect OTA commissionable model, where essentially the commission is paid after the guest checks out. So even though it's not really an OTA, but to the end consumer it looks like an OTA, the vertical search on Google, when you're looking for a hotel, it looks like an OTA page. So eventually I think what's going to happen, once Cliff walks around the earth and has all those independent properties connect directly to Google, and we have 1.5 million properties listed directly on Google, it's going to be the largest distribution system, the largest platform for planning and booking travel. And in my opinion, it's going to be much more beneficial for hotels, because while with OTAs, you don't have an option of fluctuating your commission. You can increase it, they allow you to do that, but you still have to pay 20, 25%, or whatever you're paying, regardless of the strength of the demand. With Google, they offer free organic listing, so you have an option of not paying anything. If the demand is strong, you don't have to invest in it. But if the demand is weak, you can pay PPS, PPC, whatever model you choose, to drive heads and beds and to actually sell more rooms. That gives more control to the hotelier, to the business, over what you pay in terms of the distribution costs, which we know is the second largest cost to operate a property. So what, as a result, will happen, I think, is that the algorithms to bid on Google are going to start being incorporated into the revenue management systems, which none of RMS systems are offering right now. They're not even considering Google as part of their strategy, revenue management strategy, and dorms, directors of revenue managers, are not really familiar with that space yet. I think we're going to start seeing these two disciplines, marketing and revenue management, merging around Google and to start managing this budget allocated to the PPS, PPC business model. And dorms are probably ultimately going to be, and the revenue management solutions are going to be responsible for managing that side of the operations as well. I think we're going to see that happen within probably next 5 years, and all of this is going to be reshaped completely.
Very interesting.
I'll just have one counterpoint. So just one. I think that you're looking at it, I think, the same way I'm trying to describe it from like an overall cost of distribution standpoint. But kind of going back to technology, does it work for people? There is still that element of trust and service that folks may not feel comfortable. Perhaps if it's that one trip a year to Hawaii, or it's the trip to a foreign country where they're not quite sure of the language when they arrive and they're not quite sure about payment. And we need to address those things as well so that folks are going to be comfortable making a booking in the manner that they're going to feel comfortable with who's got their back if things go wrong when they show up. And I think
Expedia's got their back?
What's that?
Do you think Expedia's got their back?
I think some people do think that. I might for a particular travel experience.
Would you rather book on Google or on Expedia?
Well, I'm not going to. It's not about.
Not allowed to.
It's not about Cliff. I'm a direct booker in general because I feel like I've been in line too many times behind people that are getting told by the front desk that they have no record of their booking.
I love to hear that we still can offer
yeah.
value directly as well. Thank you. So I think it's very hard to talk about technology, future, and all of that if we don't talk about the people. Hospitality is still about the people who greet each other, and we've seen it all today, all over, that we are happy to be together, we are happy to speak together, and I think it's very typical of the hospitality industry. But Carl, my next question would be to you. I'm very curious of, 20 years ago, let's say, when I applied for hospitality school, it was oversubscribed. Probably 10 classes could have been filled. What's the situation today? Is the hospitality industry still attractive to the young people?
So I have good news and not so good news. The traditional hotel school of the past has got problems. Enrollments are down globally. Every school is down 20 to 50% in enrollment. So the future pipeline going into the big brands is actually pathetic. I've been in constant contact with the people who do the recruiting for these companies, wondering, are you going to come to my campus and hire my 3 graduates? I've got more than 3, but they're saying, we'll hire anybody that's breathing. Our pipeline is dry, and the hotel schools are saying, so are ours. And so I think we have a fundamental problem. The excitement of working at the Westin Peachtree and doing banquet service for a 20-year-old today has gone from, okay, to no thank you. And that's not an insult to my friends at Marriott, who, that's in his brand portfolio. So that's the bad news, is it's not very exciting following the great resignation and this great shift that's gone on. The good news is actually in this room. You guys are sexy. Well, most of you. Sorry, Sebastian, you're still here. But the rest of you are sexy. And I think to a 20-year-old saying, you want to work in hospitality technology, distribution? You want to work from home? Yeah, that's cool. And I think the people in this audience, you actually have an unbelievable competitive advantage compared to the old school, hotel school graduates. They would love to go to work for your organizations. And I think it's a matter of us figuring out how to get together to make what is really a fantastic career opportunity come to life for these young people. Because honestly, they don't want to be in this building taking care of you today at your event. So why not have them go to work for you?
Thank you. Very interesting and a little bit scary as well. Maybe Satyan, if we can talk about a little bit, when we talk about people and technology advancement, the first thing in the past came to our mind was that how technology takes away people's jobs. And I think that if we talk about hospitality and our future, we really see that it enhances the opportunities rather than taking away. You, as an employer, how do you feel about that? How do you attract talent, and what do they find interesting about working for a company like yours?
That's a great question, and it comes up in every industry, not just hospitality. So, when we automate, certain day-to-day tasks, that actually is a win-win situation, both for the guest as well as for the employees. To cite an example, like, we are redefining how hospitality is done, and still we have large teams that are responsible for guest experience, both on-site as well as off-site. What happens is, by automating things like the front desk or a concierge desk and other tasks like that, it is a win for the guest, because now they have more self-service options, and the service they get is a lot faster. And it's a win for our employees, because now they don't have to do the tasks that they don't want to, as you mentioned, they don't want to do it, but now they have more bandwidth to spend to delight the guests. They can do more value-added tasks to bring guest delight.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. So we have questions from the audience as well. Let's take a look at that one now. What do you think quality guest engagement and customer service will look like in the future as the industry looks to adopt more self-serve and automation?
I know I don't talk enough, so I'll probably pitch in here. This is one of the favorite questions that I also get asked, and this is related to the previous question you asked: will technology replace humans? And we, as a high touch, and I know that that's John Burns' favorite terms, we're a high touch industry, we're not high tech industry. Historically, this is the way we've been evolving, and the misconception is that, okay, you implement high tech, you can't really be high touch anymore. I completely disagree, and just like technology will never completely replace humans, technology will not make our industry less hospitable. It's actually just the opposite. Technology will allow us to provide much better customer service, because, for example, as a front desk employee, which I used to be a gazillion years ago, I would have to answer the phone every 5 minutes explaining the customers, the travelers, how to get to my hotel. Right on Broadway, left on 6. I will never forget that, every 5 minutes. Then Google Maps got introduced, people stopped calling, I had more time to actually cater to the guests. The same way when we implement chatbots, for example, they eliminate all these questions that the front desk gets asked or customer service gets asked, because all these questions are now answered automatically by an AI algorithm. So that actually improves customer satisfaction and allows us, in our roles, to provide much better customer service, to have more time to cater to our guests, or if we're not in the front line, if we're not a frontline employee, we're in the back office somewhere. We transition to a more strategic role. We do our job better. We do actually much more exciting things. We're moving from number crunching, boring routine tasks that now machine do for us, to more strategic roles that actually also ultimately affect customer satisfaction as well. So I think as we implement more and more technology in our operations and our frontline and back office function, that will ultimately allow us to be much more efficient, but also and profitable, but also to improve customer satisfaction dramatically and remain being a high-touch industry, but also in conjunction with being a high-tech, modern industry of the 21st century, as we should be someday. Hopefully we'll get there.
I think it's a beautiful vision.
Aww. I agree.
Let's work towards that. Another question we got, it's very interesting, I think, especially as we spent long hours the other day with the HEDNA board discussing about education and the future of education within HEDNA. Most hospitality programs don't teach distribution. Do you think HEDNA can play a role on changing that? any recommendations? And maybe Carl, indeed.
What's distribution? Okay, it's a joke. Yeah, you're right. Nobody's teaching this. Like it's almost a foreign concept. I mean, even revenue management is just reaching some campuses right now. I mean, some it's very deep, but there's campuses that don't even know what revenue management is. So you start talking distribution, and it's like, what can you do? We need to get you all onto our campuses and talking to our faculty and students, because neither understand what you do. It's a big issue and a big problem. I think product management's a whole nother thing about that we don't understand on the campuses. I mean, I think there's a lot to do. So what you do is important. Who knows about it is also important, and they don't know it. So there's a lot of opportunity for HEDNA to take a leadership position and help certain campuses figure out how to do this. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
If I may add, in addition to education, standardization across the industry is something that can also really help. There's multiple different OTAs. There's a long tail of them. There's GDSs. There's the meta channels, and every integration is different. There are some startups that are unifying all of that so that with one go you can integrate. However, there's no reconciliation of whether my unit is really live, whether the pricing is correct, right? And so standardization of information exchange across this entire ecosystem can really help make these integrations faster, less expensive, less error prone, and just easier.
One point maybe just following up on Carl, getting folks on campus and to work with educators, maybe a little bit of HEDNA content, just distribution 101 that could be shared among members to make that a little bit easier could potentially be helpful, and then keep it up to date as well.
Yeah, I went to the class that you guys did yesterday at the university, and attended the distribution fundamentals session. It was very informative. I mean, even for me, after 20 years in the industry, I actually learned new things. And I think that definitely could be beneficial for at least do a guest lecture, even online in multiple universities worldwide. Why not? I mean, it's definitely very useful content. In 90 minutes, actually was packed with insights and information that I think many students would benefit, because I think very few people actually clearly understand the landscape of distribution. It's the most complex part of our ecosystem.
I'm very pleased to hear about that as well. Education and standardization is definitely something that's on HEDNA's flag, so it looks like there's a future for us all. Thank you very much. We just came to the end of the discussion. I could go on forever with questions, and I see that there's a lot of more, so I hope we'll find you around later today maybe, or tomorrow, to ask more questions. Thank you very much. It's been a very delightful and exciting conversation. I really enjoyed it, and thanks you.
We'll be at the bar at the Coca-Cola company. Thank you, guys. Thanks for attending. Thanks so much.